All right, let's get into it. We're going to tackle the ASP.NET Core Developer Roadmap for 2026. For this, I want you to think of me as your senior mentor. We're going to cut through all the noise and map out a clear, no-nonsense plan that will take you from the very basics all the way to landing that first developer job.
So if you've ever stared at one of these roadmaps, you know exactly what this feels like, right? It's just this giant, tangled web of technologies. And believe me, I've been there. It is so easy to feel completely overwhelmed. But here's the secret. The goal isn't to learn every single thing at once. It's about learning the right things in the right order. And that's exactly what we're going to do today.
We've broken this whole journey down into 6 really logical stages. We're going to start with the absolute rock-solid fundamentals. Then we'll move into building your first real projects, level up how you think about architecture, craft a portfolio that actually gets you noticed, and then we'll get you ready to crush the technical interview. And finally, we'll talk about how to navigate the challenges of that critical first year. So, let's dive in.
Okay, first things first, the foundation. I'm telling you, you cannot skip this part. Trying to learn ASP.NET Core without these fundamentals, it's like trying to build a skyscraper on sand. It's not going to work. So listen, before you even think about firing up a new web project, you need to focus on these 3 pillars seriously. Get comfortable with C#. Really get a handle on the syntax and the core concepts. Then master Git for version control. Every single professional team uses it. And finally, you have to understand the basics of SQL and how databases are designed. This trio right here, this is your ticket in the door.
Okay, with that solid foundation in place, it is time to get our hands dirty and actually start building stuff. This section is all about the heart of ASP.NET Core itself. These are the tools you're going to use day in and day out to create web applications and APIs.
Now in ASP.NET Core, there are kind of 2 main paths you can take. On one side, you've got minimal APIs. They're the new, streamlined way to build super fast backend services. On the other hand, you have MVC and Razor Pages, which give you this more structured, batters-included framework. It's fantastic for bigger web apps with a lot of user interface. You got to know which tool is right for the job. My advice for beginners? Start with minimal APIs. It'll help you really understand the core HTTP concepts. Then you can move on to MVC for your bigger projects.
And here is the magic wand that handles all your database work, Entity Framework Core. Look, instead of writing all this tedious and, frankly, error-prone SQL code by hand, EF Core lets you talk to your database using the C# you already know. It literally translates your C# into SQL for you. Mastering this tool is a huge productivity booster and, honestly, an absolute must-have skill.
All right, so you can build an app that works. That's great. But now we've got to talk about building an application that lasts. This is the big leap. This is where you go from just being a coder to thinking like a software architect. We're talking about building systems that can grow, that can handle failure, and that are easy for a whole team to work on.
This is probably the most fundamental choice you'll make in modern architecture. A monolith is basically one big, self-contained application. It's way simpler to get started with. Microservices, on the other hand, break your app into all these small, independent little pieces. It's more complex for sure, but it gives you incredible scalability. Understanding the trade-offs here is a key senior-level skill. A rule of thumb I always use is start with a well-structured monolith. Only think about moving to microservices when your team starts getting slowed down because everyone's tripping over each other in the same codebase. And this brings us to Docker, which is completely non-negotiable in 2026. Docker solves that classic age-old problem of, well, it works on my machine. It does this by packaging your application and everything it needs into a single portable thing called a container. This guarantees it's going to run the exact same way everywhere, from your laptop to the cloud. It is the bedrock of modern microservices and deployments.
So when your different microservices need to talk to each other, you really don't want them tightly connected. That's where something called a message broker, like RabbitMQ or Kafka, comes in. They let services communicate asynchronously, sort of like leaving messages in a mailbox. If one service goes down, the message just waits in the queue until it's back up. This makes your entire system way more resilient. It's a crucial concept.
Look, theory's great, but code is proof. A strong portfolio is the single most powerful tool you have to show an employer what you can actually do. So we're going to outline 3 specific projects that build on each other and show off a whole range of skills that are in high demand.
Start right here. Build a standard REST API. It could be for a simple to-do list, a blog, whatever.
This project is your bread and butter. It proves you have nailed the fundamentals. You can create endpoints, you can talk to a database with Entity Framework Core, and you know how to handle web requests. This is the baseline skill every single hiring manager is looking for.
All right. For your second project, we're going to level up. You'll add real-time functionality with a tool called SignalR. Think of things like a live chat or instant notifications. You'll also implement caching with something like Redis. This shows that you're not just building features, you're actually thinking about performance and the modern user experience. And let me tell you, those are two things that really pop on a resume. This one is your capstone project. You're going to build a small system with a few separate microservices. They'll talk to each other using a message broker like RabbitMQ, and you'll package the whole thing up with Docker. A project like this on your GitHub, it tells a technical lead that you're not just a junior anymore. It says you're ready to think about modern, scalable, enterprise-grade systems.
You've built the skills. You've got the portfolio. Now it is time to go win the job. Technical interviews can be pretty nerve-wracking, I know, but they often circle around the same core concepts. So let's get you ready for two of the most common ones. You are almost certainly going to be asked this question. I guarantee it. Dependency injection is right at the very heart of how ASP.NET Core works, and understanding how these object lifecycles are managed is absolutely critical. Let's break it down so it's crystal clear. So it really just boils down to these three lifecycles. Singleton means one single instance gets created and it's shared across the entire application for its whole life. Perfect for something like a logger. Scoped means a new instance is created for each web request. This is ideal for things like your database context. And then transient means a brand new instance gets created every single time somebody asks for it. Best for small stateless utility services. Just know this table. If you know this, you will nail that question.
And here's the other big one, the request pipeline. This is how ASP.NET Core handles an incoming request from a user's browser all the way to your application code. Understanding this flow is so key.
I want you to think of it like a production line, or maybe like an onion, with layers. The request comes in and it passes through a series of these middleware components. The first one might check if you're logged in. The next might figure out which piece of your code needs to handle the request. Then, after your code runs, the response travels back out through those same middleware components, but in reverse order. It's this ordered, layered structure that's so important to understand.
Congratulations, you got the job. But guess what? The learning does not stop there. In fact, it's just beginning. Your first year is such a critical time for growth. So, as your mentor, here's my best advice on how to make the most of it and how to avoid the mistakes that pretty much every new developer makes.
I see junior developers fall into these traps all the time, but let's just focus on two huge ones. First, being afraid to ask for help. Seniors expect you to have questions. Asking a smart question, especially after you've tried to solve it yourself for a little bit, is a sign of strength, not weakness. Second, not writing tests. I know it feels faster to skip them, but trust me, a good test suite is the only thing that will let you change code with confidence and sleep well at night. If you can avoid just these simple traps, you will be on the fast track.
So let's leave you with this final thought. Remember, the goal here isn't just to check a bunch of boxes off a roadmap. The real goal is to become a great problem solver who uses these tools to build cool things and create value. This journey never really ends, but you now have a map. The only thing left to do is to take that first step. So go build something amazing.